What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I'm your host, Wes Tankersley. Today we have a great guest for you. He is a personal trainer, a podcaster, a husband, father of two, and we will get to our chat with Michael Gray after a little word from our sponsor.
Here on the show with me, Jeffrey Hill, we are always looking for new people to come on the show as a guest and share their stories. I love to talk to actors, singers, producers, filmmakers, authors, and tons of other people. If you or somebody you know would be a great guest for my show or any other shows on the network, just go to tvpbn.com/the show prep and fill out the application today. I look forward to seeing you.
And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
All right, everyone, thanks for hanging out with me today. Today we have a special guest, Michael Gray. He is someone that I went to high school with, and I just started talking to him for the first time in about 22 years. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. It's good to see you. Yeah, excited. Yeah, I was thinking about like when the last time we saw each other was, and it was probably high school, right? I mean,
I'm pretty sure it was because I'm boycott high school reunions, and so I haven't gone to the 10 or the 20. So I
went to the 10, I didn't go to the 20, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a whole like 20 people at the 20. So I think
I think pretty small.
I don't think we missed out very much.
That'd be 6 at the 30.
Yeah. Oh man. Hey, I've been watching you, even though we haven't talked, you know, with social media, it's great because we always get to kind of see what you're doing, and I've been kind of following you the whole time.
I'm with you too, man.
Yeah.
Watching you grill that meat like a master griller out there. I need to take some lessons from you.
Oh man, I don't know. You're in Texas, so you probably got some pretty good barbecue down there, I'm assuming, because I was down there about 5 years ago at a baseball clinic, and that's the only places I wanted to go.
Yeah, there's some real good barbecue around here, man. Brisket, ribs, sausage, stuff to beat. Yeah.
Yep. It's one of those great places to visit. So, hey, you know, I know I've been watching you over this whole time, and I've always struggled with my weight and struggled with fitness and struggled with those things after high school. And it's kind of refreshing to hear kind of your take on that stuff. And that's kind of why I wanted to have you on here. Can you talk a little bit about what you do? Just kind of tell us what's going on with you.
Yeah, I mean, so technically, you know, I would say I'm a personal trainer, nutritional coach, and I've been doing that it'll be 13 years in October. So longest job I've ever had. You know, and what that entails is a variety of things, but typically, you know, it's looking at where are gaps in people's nutrition or self-care, and how do we kind of help plug those gaps and build habits in a way that are sustainable and long-term. That kind of thing, so that people can be healthy just for the rest of their lives. Yeah, I tend to say I help people connect dots and then interpret the pictures. You know, kind of looking at what are our struggles, what are sort of our places that we you know, really have a difficult time with taking care of ourselves. What are the reasons behind that? How can we sort of connect these struggles, common themes, that kind of stuff, and then where are we headed from there? So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I really I started listening to, I've listened to a couple of your podcast episodes, but I was headed on up to McCall the other day for an appointment, and I probably caught, I think, 8 episodes on the way up there. It was just like one after another, and it was just really exciting to listen to it, because I know how you, like listening to you and seeing you on social media over the years and talking about, you know, training and things like that, I kind of have an idea of the way that you look at things, and it's funny because I've been through all those different types of diets, you know, keto, working out like until, you know, just depleting all those calories, everything, calories in, calories out, all these different things, trying to lose weight over my lifetime, because I was really active in high school. I played a lot of sports, and then it's over and you don't know what to do after that. I mean, it's one of those things. So I really like the take that you have on it, which is like, there's no take, right? It's not the same for every single person. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you tackle a client?
Yeah. Well, I think I think my approach it's a little bit more difficult than a lot of approaches, but I think it's the only way that we're going to have like sustainable long-term success, right? So like, you know, your typical approaches to getting healthier, they take an individual and try to plug them into like this generic approach, right? Like,
Yep.
okay, everybody needs to do keto. Everybody, you can't eat after 7 p.m. Everybody needs to intermittent fasting, whatever it is. And we're taking very specific people, unique people with different experiences with their own bodies and weights, different experiences with food, different experiences as far as like how they were raised and how people or how their families and people around them talked about food and exercise and their bodies, different goals, just a bunch of different things that really help shape or help determine what a healthy way forward is. And so my approach is kind of the opposite of that. We're not taking individual people and trying to plug them into like a generic approach. It's looking at the individual person and building approach specific to them, right? As far as, tastes and preferences and goals and time and all this kind of stuff. And I really think I feel like it's critical if we're going to look at long-term success and being sustainable, because honestly, really, like I've never met anybody. It's like, yeah, I'd like to get healthier and then be unhealthy again in 6 months, right?
Right.
But like, that's the approach a lot of us take because it's extreme, it's restrictive, it's very interruptive. It kind of takes over our whole life. And then at some point, we get tired of white knuckling it and a bad day happens or we're just exhausted and it just all kind of comes crumbling down. And then maybe a year later, we're like, okay, I'm going to do this again. And it's just this perpetual cycle. And I think the reason that a lot of us or most of us have at least found ourselves in those positions, if not continually find ourselves in those positions, is because we're going about it backwards. We're ignoring all the things that are unique to us, our personal struggles and false beliefs about ourselves and histories, and setting all that aside and just trying to take this very general approach of just checking these boxes. Did I eat these things or not eat these things or not eat here or eat here or whatever? And I really think that if we're going to do this long term, if we're going to look at really, being healthy in deep ways, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all that stuff, then we've got to design approach around us and all of the things that make, us unique and all the things that are unique to us and where we're wanting to go.
Yeah, and it's interesting listening to you talk about that because I know, and you kind of hinted at this, but it probably makes your job a little bit more difficult than your typical trainer. Because I've had trainers before myself, and you sit there and you talk to them. The first thing they do is, the one that I went to anyway, was they sat you down, they took your measurements, and then they plug you into this thing, and it tells you how many calories you should have and what you should eat of each, micro, macro, nutrients or whatever and all that stuff. And then you just follow this. And that's what you do. And you're going to do this for the rest of your life. And like you said, you start getting to the point where you get tired of things and you want to have those 10 gummy bears, right? You want to have
the bag.
Yeah, the bag. It was funny when I was listening to that because my wife is a sugar person. Like she's got to have a little candy here and there, and I never was. And so then, obviously we've been married 22 years and we're sitting here and it's like, she does that, I do that. We kind of feed off of each other. And if you cut those things out completely, you're going to overindulge. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like so often the typical approaches and the approaches that get the most attention within the fitness and diet industries are approaches that for almost 100% of the time set people up for failure. Set people up to wind up in a place where they're discouraged and they're like, of course I'm here again because this happens every time, and they're just following this kind of feel like predetermined script, right? Yeah. And it's because nothing's personal. And anytime we restrict, man, as soon as we set something off limits, that thing's attractiveness like goes through the roof. Right. Yeah. And to me, it's like, I don't know where this idea came from, but the idea that we're going to live the rest of our lives and not enjoy things that we enjoy, like, this is ridiculous to me. you know, I never tell clients you can't eat this. I never put anything off limits because I don't think that's how we go about doing things. I think a better approach is, so if there are foods that tend to be problematic that you have a hard time stopping eating, or you eat way past satisfaction into places of, like just being overly full, or that you use solely for like to handle emotions, like emotional stress eating all the time, then maybe figuring out why that's happening is the thing to approach versus just saying don't eat it. Because we can say, okay, don't eat after 8 p.m. Well, I mean, in a way that's a fix, but that's kind of like a Band-Aid on a real big wound, right? Like there's something underneath that. There's a reason that we're eating past places of comfort, or that we're eating mindlessly, or that we have a hard time stopping eating certain foods. And if we can begin to address those reasons, well, then we don't need these rules, because we're figuring that out in kind of like these deep ways, right? Like I like to say, typical approaches towards being healthier kind of outsources our success, right? Like keto is going to help me be successful. This class is going to help me be successful, whatever. And we put all of our hopes in this approach, versus I think it's a lot more worthwhile. It's harder work for sure, but to make success an inside job. How do I connect with my reasons why and what's important to me and the places I want to be in deep ways that I'm manufacturing my own motivation, that I've got these things I'm connected with that make me want to lean into deeper places of self-care versus jumping from thing to thing to thing, hoping that just this approach is what's going to get me there,
Yeah, and it's amazing. There's like one of your current episodes, you were talking about fad diets, and there's so many of those out there that it just made a lot of stuff that you guys had said in the last episodes that I've listened to. It's just great because you're talking about it just clicks. It's like you can't sustain that. You're doing this because, hey, I need to lose 40 pounds. We're not getting to the bigger, the deeper problem with that of why do you need to lose that? What are the reasons why? And you talk a lot about like body image and what the media portrays as, or people in general just portray as a healthy body type. That's just something that people struggle with. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, it's just, or even the question, do you need to lose 40 pounds?
Right.
And I think there's a huge assumption. Well, not an assumption. I think it's really good marketing.
Yeah, right.
Really good marketing in a really gross way, right? It's good in a very successful kind of way, but I think it's predatory and abusive, and I honestly believe it's that way. But it's this idea that if we're going to get healthier, then we automatically assume part of that is going to be losing weight, right? Without any kind of other information, without any kind of data that indicates, well, you might actually be healthier if you lost some weight. It's just, well, being healthier means being smaller. And I think that's often not the case. I mean, you might have a range of 20 to 30 pounds that doesn't impact your health at all.
Right.
You may want to be leaner because we're told we're supposed to be, right? Like it's like one of our big objectives as people is to get smaller in life, right? Like if we never get the 6-pack, then, well, what are you doing, man? You're squandering your life, But I do think it is, like you said, I really am big on that body image and your relationship with your body and your relationship with your food, because I think a lot of times we're chasing unnecessary things, and we're reinforcing these false beliefs about our worth and value and our ability to accomplish things based on something that is a lot of times meaningless. It's just sort of this thing that we've been told we're supposed to do, and so we feel like we're supposed to do it, and it may not have any bearing on our health at all.
Yeah, so take us through like what you would do differently with your clients that, I kind of gave you the scenario of the trainer that I had. What do you do a little bit different, like with I guess you would call it like intake, the original, like the initial talk with them, and then setting up their plan and all that stuff? How do you go about that?
So, my initial intake with someone is really just it's a long conversation, usually between 45 minutes to an hour. And it's just, I always tell new clients, like, this is going to be like an interview, just a lot of questions, and I'm going to be taking notes, right? And I like to get a sense of, one, what's important to them, like, why have they come to me? What are the things they're wanting to accomplish? But then also, like, what do your days look like? What do your routines look like? What have past attempts at getting healthier looked like? And just try to get a bunch of information so that I have a really good sense of really where we are. I never ask anyone about their weight because I don't care, right? Like that's not an important thing to me. Now, if it impacts their health, then yes. But just in general, like I don't care what you weigh. because I think focusing on that is kind of putting the cart before the horse, right? Like that's an outcome. If we need to lose weight, then we need to focus on behaviors, and let's focus on behaviors for the sake of behaviors because they're inherently have value, right? But so it's just a long conversation where I'm trying to get a sense of where they really are, and not just where they think they are with their health or where they think they need to go, but maybe begin to cue into what are some deeper reasons why this might be important to you. What are some other things besides getting smaller that we can really begin to focus on? And then from there, I'm like I've said, earlier, I'm really big on sustainability. To me, it's like if we can't do this forever, at least in some consistent ways, then what are we doing this for? So my big thing is let's establish some really doable goals, a couple of them, not 17, right? Like we're not gonna, only eat fruits and vegetables and lean meat and avoid all processed stuff and sleep 8 hours and drink 120 hours. So yeah, I'm just like all this stuff that everybody tries to do at once.
Yep.
It's like a lot of times it's, hey, let's make a schedule for your workouts. Maybe that's twice a week to start, right? For 30 minutes or 10 minutes, like whatever it is, what feels doable. And maybe it's, let's try to get a fruit and a vegetable every day. And let's start there. And then as these become more consistent and they're not so top of mind, they just kind of become ingrained in what we do, then let's build on them. And then when those become more habitual, let's build on that. And I think what happens is we wind up in the same place that people try to start and maintain, but we wind up there having these things just kind of built into our routines and our habits and that kind of stuff. And it's just a lot easier way to be successful long term.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like James Clear's habit stacking. Like you just start adding a little bit here and there and just keep going and adding a little more. So,
yep,
and that sounds
100%.
like, a perfect way to sustain it by continuing to just add a little bit, but stay consistent in the previous goals.
Yep. And my big thing, honestly, is err on the side of caution, because I would rather have set goals a little bit too easy and have people feel like they're crushing it versus a little bit too hard and feel like, I'm failing right out the gate, because even if you have to pull things back, and you wind up where you would be from the other direction, you wind up in a very different mental state. If you have to step things up, that's like, yeah, I'm crushing it. Let's go. If you have to pull things back, that's a rough place to start right from the beginning. And I think that's what happens with most of us, right? We take on all these huge lifestyle changes, and a week or two or a month or two later, we're like, I can't do all this stuff.
Right.
And so I must be doing it wrong because I can't maintain all the things I'm supposed to be doing. When it's like, no, you're really just a person and life happens, and we only have so much, resources. We only have so much time and energy and attention that we can give stuff to. And when we add all these things into an already full life, well, what do we think is going to happen? We can't give all that stuff attention because we just don't have it.
Yeah, and it's crazy because most of the time what happens is you restrict everything that you're doing, and the next thing you know, you take that one, you're like 2 months, you're banging it out, you've lost 20 pounds or whatever, but you get to that point where, the scale didn't move today. Well, screw it, I'm going to go try something else, and then you just blow up because you just continue to, you're like, a little bit won't hurt me, and I didn't do this, and the next thing you know, you're just back on that slippery slope again.
Yep, it's kind of that all or none thinking, and I think that's probably the most common problematic mindset that I see, is that all or none thinking. Either I'm doing everything or I'm doing nothing. It's like these are the only two options. And I think part of my job as a coach is helping people understand there is so much space in between those two options that we can exist.
Yeah.
And to move like a continuum up and down that line is really okay. If you start out and life's good and you're able to exercise 4 or 5 hours a week and you're doing meal prep and that kind of stuff, great. But then what happens when a parent gets sick, is in the hospital, or someone loses a job, or whatever, like stressful things happen? Well, then it's like we often feel like we have to continue to be performing at this certain level and doing a certain number of things that we've been doing, right? And if I can't do them all, then what's the point? And it's like, man, you can pull back. Like you can scale things back a little bit to a manageable place and still be doing something, which is a whole lot more than doing nothing. And then we're continuing to flex and kind of strengthen these muscles of being mindful about what we're doing and doing things where we can and offering ourselves grace and forgiveness, for not being able to do what we think we should be doing. And then when things calm down, it's a lot easier to step stuff up back to a previous level than starting from scratch. Yeah. And, so I think that's one of the main things I try to help instill in clients is this ability, like, it's not on or off, right? It's not like we're doing it or we're not. It's let's always be doing it, but let's give ourselves the ability to bend and flex things to make it match life as it changes, because it's going to change. And if we can't adapt to life's changes, then we're not going to do this sustainably ever, because life is going to change a bunch of times.
Right.
And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's no, like we've been talking about, there's no cookie cutter, way of doing it. And everyone's body is different. We're all, it's so great. I just love, can you talk a little bit about your podcast? Because I love what you guys talk about. I love how it's just open. It's one of those things where, I don't know, it's just kind of refreshing to hear that take on it, because you either have one way or the other, right? And it's neat. Right. And I think it's a great help for people who do struggle with their health, and it's a lot of eye-opening information.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that, man. The podcast is called Middleish. And our tagline is a podcast about moderation in all things. And I co-host that with Erin Green. She's a registered dietitian up there in Boise. She and I have known each other for 12 years, I think, and kind of off and on through the years. She became a dietitian right around the same time that I first became a trainer, and we met around that time. Her husband actually did my wife and I's wedding pictures, so that's how we met. And we just kind of stayed in contact over the years. We talked about doing something, and then as things were kind of closing down in the pandemic, like everyone, we're like, hey, we can start a podcast.
Right.
Which was funny because it was hard to find like microphones and ring lights and stuff, because everybody was starting a podcast.
Right.
So like something to do. But, we've shared really similar philosophies through our careers doing this, of just, extreme and intense is usually not the way to go about this. And so we just felt like it was this message that we shared was an important one to put out there. And so I think June of 2020, we started it a little over a year ago. And our whole approach and kind of what we're wanting to accomplish is just honestly helping people find freedom from like these really restrictive, rigid approaches to being healthy. And it's just funny because if we look at it like typical approaches they're really restrictive, man. Yeah. Like a lot of rules, a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts, a lot of do's and don'ts, but yet that's the approach we're taking to take better care of ourselves. Right. It's like those two things don't line up when we look at them, when we think about it in that way. And so just trying to help people find freedom from a lot of that restriction and help people understand, like, listen, it's not just all or none, right? Those aren't only two options. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle, that middle-ish, right? And what that means for you is different from the person sitting next to you. It's different from your spouse and your brother and your friends, whatever. It's all incredibly individual and has to be tailored to the individual, because like that's what we are, know. And so we just try to present a lot of information in unbiased ways. We try to look at the science behind some things, and what does the science say. And then just what is our experience of working with people for, over 12 years each? What have we found to be beneficial? What are the things that are traditional approaches that people latch onto that wind up being really harmful, that wind up setting us back in ways that we don't realize are setting us back? And so that's kind of the thrust of Middleish, is just looking at, trying to step out of that. Either I'm doing everything or I'm doing nothing, and looking at where's the approach that's best for you personally.
Right. And it's cool because it's like you said, she's a dietitian, you're a trainer, nutrition guy, and you guys can talk and just kind of talk about both different aspects of that whole situation. And it's very insightful. So I'm glad you're doing it. And I hope that,
Thanks, man.
I hope that keeps going. It's awesome. Like I've got it. I just subscribed to it. I'd been listening to it back and forth,
nice.
But it's just like, I'm going to subscribe now because I'm going to listen to it every week. So keep putting them
It's
out.
Fun. It's super, like the the amount of unscriptedness, it's just like at best we've got a few bullet points. It's like, let's go. Let's just keep it real. Just like this, right? Like, let's just have a conversation. Now, where it goes, it goes. And I think there's some podcasts I like that you can tell are very like formatted and that kind of stuff. But, and I think if it's just informational, that's fine. But when it's something like this, like, to me, that conversational aspect is so much more attractive. And I think it's such a better way to convey concepts and that kind of stuff, to just be open and honest and just like, hey, here's where we're going. Let's just figure it out as we go and have a conversation. Yeah. So I like this.
Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it too. It's funny because it's more for me to just have a conversation with people, and just kind of help other people see what that looks like. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, so it's been great having you on. I appreciate you taking the time. If someone wants to do a little training with you or follow you, I've got your Instagram handle. It's been scrolling across the bottom the whole time, but perfect. What's the best way to get a hold of you? Because you do online training, and you've done that for a long time, correct?
Yeah, and that's the bulk of what I do is online training. I train a few people here in this little studio in my house, but most of my training's online. Yeah. Online training, nutritional coaching. So Instagram is a great way to get a hold of me. If you want to kind of check out more about how I do things and my message, that's a great place to kind of scope that out. And you can send me a message there. You can check out my website, which honestly doesn't get updated too often, michaelgrayfitness.com, or you can just shoot me an email, michaelgrayfitness@gmail.com. Any of those are great.
Well, great. I think, like I said, I appreciate you being on here. We do have one question that we ask every single person that comes on here, because the show is called Shaping Success, and really what it is about showing other people how to be successful in whatever field they're in or whatever they desire to be in. That it's not the end all when you're not there. So my question to you, this is the last one, it is, how do you shape your success? What do you consider success in your eyes?
So how do I shape success and what do I consider success? I consider success, for me, I feel like my life is successful when I'm stretched in healthy ways, like I have a healthy amount of stress, right? That like is pushing me forward, is keeping me sharp, isn't letting me get complacent. And I'm able to do and afford the things that I want to do. Not insane things, but spend time with my family, right? Like carve out space to create memories with my kids and my wife and that kind of stuff. And just to have a handful of people that I can be just really authentic with, that's how I measure success. How I shape it, I think for me over the last, almost 13 years of doing this, I think the biggest thing has been to be like water, right? I think that's a Bruce Lee quote, something like be like water, where it's not getting fixed into a specific role or mindset or whatever. Because honestly, if I look at the trainer I was 10, 11 years ago, like it's nothing at all the same, right? Like I've adapted and grown, and I've thrown a bunch of things away. There's a lot of things I've left behind. Like, man, I wish I'd never done this with clients. But you grow and you learn. And so I think as you grow and you learn and you have these experiences, you apply them. And then you live from those places, because I think that's how, whether it's a coach or just a father or a husband or a friend or whatever, that's how we level up, right? I think that's how we become more successful and more able to do the things we're wanting to do in deeper and more efficient ways, is by applying those experiences, applying that knowledge, and not being afraid of growth, even though it can be pretty scary sometimes.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes it means, leaving your business behind and moving 2,000 miles across the country, starting from scratch. So,
yeah, well, I think that's, it's like we talked about, that's one of those risks that sometimes you just got to take. You just have to be, you just have to pack up your stuff and roll out and do what you think is right. So
just being open to life, like, hey, what's it got for me?
Yeah.
Not trying to control it so much, but just being open to where it takes you.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoy connecting with you again and having this conversation. So
thanks, man. I appreciate this. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing it.
You betcha.
All right, everyone.
Thanks,
Yep. All right, everyone. Well, that is the end of the show. Great conversation with Michael Gray. Like you said, check him out. You can go find him at Michael Gray Fitness on Instagram if you need some training or anything like that. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success. Oh, did we get frozen? There we go.
Frozen on my-
No, the